What's up, everyone? What's up, everyone? What's up, everyone? Thank you so much for checking in with us. Today on Thinking Out Live, we're going to be discussing World War III and fucking Putin and all those crazy Ruskies talking about how they're going to nuke the US. Yeah, Rob, we saw today a headline come out, as you can see above. Russian politician calls for nuclear strikes on the United States. Take that away. What is your first thoughts on that?
Well, so Russia is actually in a uniquely capable position from a nuclear war standpoint. Maybe in some ways more capable than us because they are set up to sustain long-term nuclear war. All of their subway stations, SEAL, all of their submarines are autonomous and independently capable of starting a nuclear war at any time. And they use cables on the bottom of the ocean to communicate. So, and we don't know where they are. So, their ability to send a message might be superior to ours in the event of a electromagnetic event. Like, they have 500 nit EMP bombs, and we have them too, but they would be less affected by EMP warfare than we would because, well, they also don't really care about their people that much.
Yeah.
And
They've also, like you said, they've been planning and prepping for that for a lot longer than we have. Like you said, like everything, their entire populace would stand a much greater chance at survival and just their infrastructure not going down as quickly.
well, yeah, I mean, we can't even affect their submarines' ability to communicate because the cables would, but being at the bottom of the ocean, they're not going to be affected by EMP. The water itself insulates it.
Yeah, I mean
So
the cables have to come out of the out of the water at some point, though, right? So like if you can get to the connection point,
I don't know.
depending on where they're leading, depending on where they're leading.
They just jack in. They have like locations that they know where to go and to work to plug directly in, and and then they can communicate with each other or they can communicate back to the Kremlin. So I don't know. It wouldn't look good, and I think that the first attempt would most likely be to just bring a diesel submarine as close to our eastern seaboard as possible, removing our ability to use ground to air defense. And
Well,
which would be bad because they could basically nuke us in seconds instead of we wouldn't even see it coming. Um,
yeah, I mean, like that. Well, speaking of which, that supposedly they had a couple of Russian nuclear subs just off the coast in international waters to the west coast again, just this last week, according to some other breaking news headlines. Um, I wonder. I'm just doing a quick search.
well,
So
they also fly Russian bears, really close to our.
yeah, they also do enter airspace that they shouldn't be. You are frozen, my friend. Lose you. We will take a quick break and be right back. And we're back from that minor technical difficulty. Obviously, sometimes things get janky when you're streaming across the fucking universe. So we were saying about Russian capabilities. They are not only entering international waters that are off of our coast, coming really close to our borders in the water, but they're also getting dangerously close to our own airspace.
Yeah, and in some cases, actually in our airspace. They flew Russian bears a few times, and They also have been flanking and hazing our naval strike groups in a pretty pretty brazen way. It's happened a number of times where they'll just fly directly over aircraft carriers, and I think that they feel mostly confident that we're not going to do anything, or they wouldn't be doing it.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember the current who leads in like the actual breakdown. I'm pretty sure we're number 2, but I know Russia has, I think it's 5,700 and some odd nukes, and then
I think they have.
We're right behind them. I think at like 3,700 and something, as of 2021 at least, was the last time I looked it up. So I mean, like they're
5,977 nuclear warheads.
okay. And then America's stockpile is like 3,750, I think. So I mean,
And then
like
we have a certain amount on like a ready standby, and their engines are always on, and they're ready to go. Let's see how many we have.
I believe it's 3,750, but yeah, I mean, like between, I mean, the fact that they have like almost double our capacity, you know, I mean, not quite, but I mean, pretty close to double the amount of nukes that we have is kind of nuts. Granted, a large portion of that almost 6,000 that they have are inactive
Or not maintained.
or not maintained, but still, just the fact that like they could maybe throw them other places. I don't know. It's I do you think how empty do you think that threat is?
So I don't know. I guess if if Russia can't or doesn't want to reconcile its failures in the Ukraine, and if it intends to win, I would say they have a greater chance of nuking the Ukraine than they do us. However, it's a very big gamble that if they do that, that we won't just turn around and send everything.
Yeah.
And I think that so they have hypersonic delivery vehicles. We have hypersonic delivery vehicles. They have hypersonic ground-to-air defenses. We have hypersonic ground-to-air defenses. Though we don't even need hypersonic ground-to-air defenses to defend against a nuke. Most likely, if they would sneak attack us, if they're actually going to do it, they're going to go off the East Coast. They're going to surface just long enough to shoot a couple nukes off that we're not going to be able to stop. And our, the Missile Defense Agency, who's the primary, it's the primary Department of Defense body that regulates our defenses, and so they use, radar systems, and we've got them all over the fucking world. But that doesn't help us if they shoot it from 10 miles off the coast or a couple miles off the coast. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and our defenses are good, but no defense is perfect. So you can pretty much expect that if they fired everything, about 10% of their nukes would come through, which is about 600 of them. And that is not good.
No, I would say it's not good, especially because we have so many massive targets that would just completely destroy huge portions of our military forces. Huge, I mean, and like just because of how many people we have at the edges of our country, like you launched just a nuke. If just one nuke makes it into Seattle,
or our capital,
or LA, or I mentioned other places first because I feel like they're honestly more important. I feel like the capital's kind of like a no-brainer, like that would get hit. But I mean, I feel like the devastation of innocence across the country would probably be handled even less poorly, or handled more poorly, depending on how you want to look at it, I feel like if they launched a nuke into New York, into LA, into Seattle, into Atlanta, into Miami, into like these major hubs where there's just millions and millions of people. Excuse me. I feel like that would be one way for them to kind of like go about it. Just because I mean, it's kind of what we did to Japan, right? Like we like just leveled major cities, and we're like, if you keep fucking around, you're gonna find out more. You know what I mean? So I imagine that they go for like that mass extinction of Americans as quickly as possible to be like, if you don't knock this out, and like they're just gonna be like, oh, either submit or it's just full out nuclear war.
Well, I think that they would most likely hit
Americans
the
today would
Ukraine
submit.
first.
Maybe. I mean,
And I think that they would do a showing of force. So what they would do is they do like some type of like aerial blast in a non-populated area just to show that they're willing to do it. Most likely.
Just a really small scale nuke.
Yeah,
I mean,
just a tactical nuclear, warhead of some kind, and then they would detonate it. I think most likely in a non-populated area, specifically just to show that they've got the balls to do it. Because it's either that.
I mean, with how precious Ukraine's soil is, I don't even know that I would do that if I was them. Like, I would want to keep them as least Chernobyl-y as possible.
Yeah, that's why I said aerial somewhere in a non-populated area. Like, that's what they would want to get the point across that they're willing to do it, but they wouldn't want to risk, I don't know, getting obliterated over the Ukraine.
I mean, I guess to me it's kind of like if they launch a nuke at all into Ukraine, I feel like the response is World War III. Like whether they kill a bunch of people.
I'm not 100% sure that we would defend the Ukraine under those circumstances.
Well, according to Biden, and I'm just going based off of what our current administration has said, that there is absolutely nothing that we won't do for Ukraine.
Yeah.
So
I'm just not so sure I believe it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I believe it either.
We're sending billions upon billions of dollars. We're giving them a lot of advantages militarily. But when push really comes to shove, I don't think we would let 150 million Americans die as a result of holding the Ukraine.
I don't think that. We can't know for certain how many would die or how they would launch nukes. I'm just saying, if you're gonna launch nukes, like if you're already gonna have the balls to do it, I feel like a Bach of that level, like almost. Oh, you almost shouldn't do it, right? Like if you're gonna launch a nuke and you're gonna have the balls to do it, like, and I don't feel like Putin would just launch a nuke into a hill. I feel like he would actually use a nuke. If he was gonna use it,
I just think that if he did just launch it into a hill, that's the greatest chance of us not responding nuclearly immediately, while still getting the point across that he is willing to go that far.
I feel like launching a nuke into a hill isn't going that far. It's kind of like Japan and Korea launching missiles over Taiwan or over other places. You know what I mean? Like they're not actually like landing anywhere. They're just like, oh, see, like we're crazy, like we'll maybe do it, but it's like.
I mean, I think that North Korea is a legitimate threat, and I think that what would happen if we got into some type of issue that involved nuclear weapons, you would see North Korea nuke South Korea almost instantly, and you would also see them nuke Japan. So they could, and then you'd see China invade Taiwan. And I'm surprised they hadn't already done it already.
Yeah, I don't know why that hasn't happened. But
after they invade Taiwan, they'll most likely invade Okinawa and start to claim some of the islands back for their own country's interests. It would be, and if they did that, we would pretty much have to go to war with them immediately because they're just going to steamroll all the way through Asia. If that's and we have interests in that not happening.
Yeah. The it would be interesting to see how that turned out, especially well going. And I wanted to go back really quick to this actual headline. I mean, the politician in this case legit says we, the only way to make Americans understand is a nuclear weapon on their forehead, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, to me, it's like if they're gonna launch nukes, if they're gonna push the fucking button, like I don't know, maybe they really do just fucking launch some nukes over here. Like Putin already said, if you interfere anymore, that's what's gonna happen, and he said it like plain as day, pure and simple. He made no mistake about it. And then then Biden sends 31 Abrams tanks over to fucking Ukraine.
Yeah.
Which is a huge deal. Like, it's not just like, oh, here's a couple missiles, here's some ammo, here's some guns. Like, here's 31 Abrams tanks with the fucking resources to run them, training to figure out how to, like, with like a backing to get the job done with them. And meanwhile, Russia can't even beat fucking foot soldiers with their tanks. So,
well, that's just really highly suspect. Something's not right, not adding up about how a superpower like Russia is performing so poorly against, even though they're armed by us to a first world nation level, kind of. The idea that all of the Russian military war machine can't effectively beat the poorest country in the world and sustain 108,000 dead, killed in action, and 347,000 injured at that rate. I mean, they'll run out of military before, you know what I mean? Before it's, that's unsustainable. And the idea that somehow,
I think that that has to be propaganda. That has to be a coordinated misinformation act by both sides, right? Like Ukraine's like, oh, we've only lost 9,000. Like, keep coming, Russia. We're gonna kill you. Like, and Russia's like, oh my God, we've lost so many. Like, I feel like there's just no way that Russia has had 70K dead, right? We've already talked about it earlier
in the first, like 30 to 60 days.
Yeah, in the first, even if it was the first few months, dude, that's as many as we lost in all of Vietnam. It's more than it's more than we lost, way more. It's like what is that? Fucking over 10. It's like over 12 times as many as we lost in the entire 20-year fucking conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like, there's just no way.
How many we lost? I think we lost what, 6,000?
Yeah, it's roughly 6,000 ish, or I think it's just under 6,000 to date. So, last I checked, so like we're at 5,000 something. So like, if we rounded, let's just say,
there was 2,456 dead in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah, so I mean, I just can't imagine that they actually lost 70,000 troops in a matter of.
Well, but to what
even if it was over
Russia have to that type of propaganda?
Well, I don't. Did Russia say that? Was it? I thought that was.
We're the ones saying it.
Yeah, of course we're the ones saying it. But you know what I mean? Like, we want to.
What, make the Ukraine feel strong?
I mean, isn't that all we're doing anyway? I mean, we're sending over billions of fucking dollars while we're in a recession. We can't tell the American people that we're not beating Russia. You know what I mean? We can't be like, oh, we're sending them tanks and billions of dollars, but fucking Russia's still winning. Sorry, guys. No, like, there's no way that we're gonna tell the American people that Ukraine isn't kicking their ass.
I feel like
right?
They're treating war kind of like a blunt instrument, and they're willing to just throw an unlimited amount of human bodies at it until the Ukraine, I guess, falls under the pressure. But it doesn't make any sense that a superpower who is familiar with how war is supposed to be fought didn't just start to attack infrastructure from the beginning.
I agree to some level. But I think that they wanted the infrastructure. They didn't want to have to rebuild that infrastructure either, right? They're not the U.S. They don't go into other countries and try to do that shit. When they're they don't have the resources for it. They don't have the backing for it. They're not part of NATO. They don't have tons of other countries willing to come to the aid of what they're doing, right? If Russia rolled over Ukraine and then went to the UK or the UN was like, oh, like, can you guys give us a couple of $1 trillion so we can like rebuild the infrastructure? Like, no, fuck you. You took it over. You deal with it yourself, right?
Yeah.
So like I think that they were trying to preserve that portion of it, and and then there's the whole portion that like we kind of still have overstepped a bunch of, which is that potentially there was US based shit going on in Ukraine that's really why Putin invaded. Now whether that's true or not, we'll never know.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of suggestions on the intellectual dark web of that we might not be as squeaky clean as we would like to act.
Well, of course. I mean, there's no way we are. I mean, just look at how many dealings were going on between the Bidens and Ukrainian officials before the war kicked off. You know what I mean? Like, of course there's not. So it's like, to me, it just seems, I think this is par for the course. I think that we're looking at, in some of my other, videos I've kind of talked about, recession equals war, right? We basically, we went into a recession in 98. We went to fucking war. The ruble was doing terrible. So we allowed Russia to invade Ukraine to try to like get a boost to their economy. We fall out. We finally pull out of Afghanistan and the fucking war on terror, basically in the Middle East. We immediately go back into recession, right? And so now we're like, oh, we're looking at Ukraine like, oh man, if we can maybe piggyback on that war and try to like maybe help our economic stance. And I think that's all it really comes down to. But at the same time, these threats of nuclear war, like those are serious deals. When you have politicians in Russia calling for nuclear warheads on American foreheads, that's a big deal. Like,
it is a big deal, and I also think that there's a very strong possibility that nuclear weapons are not the end-all be-all of killing as many people as possible. I think that there's a very strong possibility that we already know Russia has been putting space weapons in space. We know China's literally dumping all of their future military budget into space alone. Like they've made it perfectly clear that that's where the next big war would be fought if we were to fight them, would be in space. So,
no, people don't even really understand. I mean, I'm sure we have weapons that are like more devastating than the nukes of World War II, right? However, even with that said, even with that said, people have like a really there's a very large misunderstanding of like the capability of a tactical nuke. Most tactical nukes are like 1 mile of
kilometers.
Yeah, like a mile of devastation followed by like 2 to 3 miles of radiation. So you're looking at like a total of 5 miles of being fucked up. Maybe 10 at the most.
The biggest nuke in the world has a devastating. It's like 14 kilometers. And then another like 20 something in fallout. But but an incineration of, I think it's like 14 kilometers. Let's see.
Yeah, it's not that big. That's the largest nuke ever built, and that it's not even operational. It was just, what I mean, like, we don't have them. Mostly because they're not really what you'd want to do anyway, right? There's also the idea of, what it would look like for an invasion somewhere else. That's really my biggest kind of question about all this. It's like, okay, yeah, you're going to launch nukes and do this and do that, but like,
I don't think that they would or could invade America. We're geographically insulated. They could invade, like, say, Alaska and take that, maybe. Yeah. But their mainland America doesn't make... We would see them coming from forever. Like, the idea that we're just going to let them move all of their Navy power to our borders to our coastlines, we would have long been nuking them before they could even get here. It takes like a month and change to float that far.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it would have to be
We,
something aerial.
yeah, or just like sneak attacks from submarines.
Yeah,
And if
I
they could
mean,
take out, you know,
if you can take out radar and satellite infrastructure, then I mean, you could make a landing, potentially.
yeah, I mean, if you, there would be serious confusion in America as a whole, anyways. Like
Yeah.
there would be a lot of panic if even one nuke hit something, and I'm not 100% sure like our government would let the internet and phones and all of that remain on. I think the government, out of self-preservation, would most likely put us in the dark. So, I
Yeah.
think and if they put us in the dark, or if worse, Russia puts us in the dark through EMP bombs, nukes, and a bunch of other stuff, you might just see the rest of the country tear itself apart before they wouldn't even really need to invade. You know what I mean? Like if all major localized trade is impacted, and people in major cities can't get food, then the fight's already won. You know what I mean?
Hmm. I guess maybe to some level, it just depends on how things turn out, how people go about it, right? Like obviously, we just saw what happened in Ukraine. Basically, the same thing happened to them, right? They were displaced, and people just fucking left, right? They didn't go crazy. They didn't start like just
I
killing each other
think
off.
I think that
Um,
they are. I think they're more uniquely set up. Same with Russia. They're more uniquely set up to withstand long-term dysphoria and other things. Because think about it, like Russia is used to being poor. People have figured out how to survive more or less under harsh conditions. And I don't think very many Americans are that set up for it mentally. And especially not those who are in cities and do not have access to hunting or stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm just saying I'm not 100% sure how the average American in, like, I don't know, New York City is gonna feel.
yeah, I mean, they could react. They could react in a completely different way, and obviously, our culture, our lifestyle, our fast food chains, our have it now mentality is definitely going to be something that's much different than how they reacted. Um,
Well, maybe
at least,
maybe I'm wrong.
maybe
Maybe
I'm
I'm
wrong.
wrong.
Maybe we're both wrong. Maybe people
Maybe it'll be like a 9/11 coming
come
together.
together. I mean, honestly, that's very possible to me. To me, it seems like there's a really good chance that like we are humbled by the fact that something like that happened, and like people just kind of open up their arms and say, you know what, like, fuck, like, it's time to like rethink the structure of things. It's time for me to look internally and be like, well, I've got to be better. I've got to do something different now to make sure that I survive, my family survives, we get out of whatever this is or what it's going to turn into. You know what I mean? I feel like it doesn't take much for people to really be put in their place, right? Like especially when you haven't had anything really rock your reality in a while. That would be something that
Yeah,
could.
it definitely would rock some people's reality.
That's how 9/11.
Um,
I mean, look at 9/11 exactly. Like we had
yeah, they forgot pretty
huge.
quick though.
Yeah, I would say that there's a good portion of people that did. There's also a lot of people that didn't. So I mean, but I think I think the forgetfulness comes from a a generation of kids who are you know that that are being let down by like an education system that is just completely
Or an
bonkers.
extremely advanced psychological operation of dismantling our country through technology and
Well, yeah, no, the 5G war is 100% something that Russia's involved with, China's involved with, our own country's involved with. Like the 5G war is something that is it might be more devastating than nukes.
Well, yeah, I mean, because it's dismantling a country from a like a moral standpoint, like
Yeah.
the what's the word? The will, the values, it's just it's all if you take away all that, you don't really have much of a country anymore. If you don't have any values, country's pretty much kaput. And I think we're already kind of feeling that as it stands right now. I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched that Russian defector in the '80s talk about
Yeah, the KGB agent.
yeah
Yeah.
a process of demoralization. And then when people who do care about the country no longer care about the other people, the people who would have been the types to fight and protect it, they're like, I'm not gonna die to protect this shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna go commit suicide on the altar of a country that not only doesn't like me, but you know
Well,
what I mean?
yeah, of course. And that's how a lot of vets are feeling now, which is like a huge
It's a
deal for
problem.
everyone.
It's
Yeah,
a
it's a huge
problem
problem.
because that means we don't have anyone who's willing to defend the country anymore. Because
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And it sure as hell isn't going to be the other people.
no, it sure as hell is not going to be the other people. It's not going to be any fucking one because yeah, like you said, it's something that's like that one. I can't remember his name, but that KGB defector from the '80s. Like
His name
it
is
was
like
this.
Yuri something.
But I mean, like he was talking about how the Russians have basically been invading the U.S. since before then, just so that they could raise kids and raise families here in the U.S. And they would like push those kids into being educators, so that now those kids that were born back then are now like professors and stuff at our major colleges and are pushing like this socialist and Marxist agenda to help destroy the country from within because they're not going to be able to invade the U.S. They can
Yeah,
certainly
so
tear it
it's
down from the demoralization and stuff like that.
Yuri Bezmenov.
Yeah, there you go. Yuri Bezmenov. And so, like, I mean, I remember when I first saw the interview fucking years ago, it just like, it struck me to my core. You know what I mean? I was like, well, fuck, like, how do you reverse that? Like, how do you reverse, like, I feel like everyone in the country, like that interview should be played like weekly on like every news station being like, don't forget about this. Like, make sure you're looking out for this. When you send your kids off to school, think about this.
Well, the problem is the harsh overcorrection that has to take place in order to unfuck that situation is something tantamount to like fascism. The only way that realistically that you can correct a situation like that is through absolute governmental control. You'd have to slowly but surely just make shit that's not logical illegal.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that we could do a better job as a country, actually persecuting and like and doing a better job identifying shit like that. Like we should be able to, as the United States, identify fucking spies and get rid of them. Identify infiltrators and get rid of them. Identify that kind of shit and get rid of it. Like you don't need fascism to do that.
Well, no, but like for example, one of the major issues I believe to the whole problem is social media is eroding and decaying the minds of an entire generation and an entire population.
Whoa, my friend, that is a whole other podcast series. Let's try to at least stay on topic for this side. I
Do
know
you think
we can
do you
we
think
can.
kids are smarter and more capable today than they were, I don't know, in our childhood?
Well, I think that in some ways maybe they are more capable than we were in other ways. You mean
They
like
have
just
Google
they have Google? No,
and
seriously though, but
they can come up with the answer to anything in real time through augmented reality and augmented intelligence.
well, I will say the real or Googleable answer, which is potentially fabricated or a lie or fact checked or whatever, right? So I mean, with that in
You get
mind,
like only a couple pages of results anymore. Like
yeah,
you can't even Google most things.
yeah.
It's
So
like
I mean,
you get a couple pages into it, and you're like, "Nope, we're done letting you see this now."
Yeah, I mean, with that in mind, and it just depends. I think that kids of our age, obviously, like we did way more things, we learned way more things, we had way more street smarts, we grew up way faster, right? We matured faster, we took on responsibility at a younger age, we were forced to take on responsibility for our actions. We actually like had some amount of respect for those ahead of us, right? And that's all being lost. And I think you're right. I think social media is definitely hugely to blame for those things. But yeah,
This is
but
the
as far as
iPod generation, bro.
yeah, I know it is.
iPod generation.
It's the it's the something Z X Y Zeta Beta whatever generation. But with that said, I mean, like, kind of again going back to on track, like Russia being part of that, Russia being part of fucking with our society, Russia being
Well,
capable
them,
of
them and
nuclear,
China, and it's
and
a
China.
it's an
They're one big.
asymmetrical financial game that I mean, it's the same thing like what China did with the Asian International Bank, AIB. They pretty much have tried to prop up their community. They tried to devalue their money. They try
Yeah.
to stay artificially poor so they can then use their money as a weapon against us by investing heavily in you
In
name it.
meat, yeah, in our land, in our meat. I mean, they own the majority of our meat industry.
Yeah.
They own fucking hundreds of millions of acres. It's insane. It's actually insane. I would be curious to see how many of those back end foreign investors from China are also maybe have Russian ties. It'd be really interesting to see how this all ties back into because yes, China's been at it too, but I feel like Russia's been at it for longer. And so China has maybe the tech game kind of over Russia a little bit, but yeah, it's just going to be really interesting to see over the next. I mean, who knows how long? I mean, like if they're already saying, if Russians are already saying, go drop nukes on America, and and the thing is, Biden literally said, if we did anything like send Abrams to fucking Ukraine, it would be World War III. And then this week he sends Abrams to World War III, or sends Abrams to Ukraine, which should mean, right, according to him, we're headed into World War III. Like, and so why are we even pushing this agenda? Like, I don't understand why, and no one's gonna be able to answer it. But it's like, how are we? First of all, how are we in a recession sending billions of dollars to some other fucking asshole country? Two, how are we? Why are we antagonizing Russia? Like there's really no need for it.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm not gonna lie.
No, it seems like that's what they want, but I feel like there's only a couple reasons for them wanting something like that, and it's
Well, it's either that they have knowledge that Russia is planning on going deeper than the Ukraine into Europe, and if they believe that, then they would prefer to fight a proxy war in a place like the Ukraine as opposed to a place like, I don't know, Poland or Romania, because we have assets there. Our missile defense shields there. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so I think we would prefer to have a muck get made somewhere that we're not already losing a huge piece of our missile shield.
Yeah, sorry.
But that's a huge assumption, and we're betting as a nation pretty heavily on that Russia won't nuke us. Which I don't know if that's very smart. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I don't know if gambling on Putin's balls is a tactic, but I think
I think that Putin's gangster's pretty strong, man, and I also think that it's part of his brand to be a tough son of a bitch, and so I don't think he's going to somehow stop being that.
well, yeah, and right now, like you were saying earlier, actually, before we started this show, that Putin and Russia as a whole has kind of backed itself into a corner to some level, like because they can't back out of Ukraine, right? Because they can't look weak. They can't like, oh, we're gonna take Ukraine and then fucking, a year into it, we're just gonna back out and settle our losses. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way that
Well,
they can
especially
afford
with
an
the
embarrassment on that
amount.
stage.
the sheer loss is significant already. You know what I mean? Tons of people supposedly,
Yeah.
public image definitely. And I don't know if you've watched any Russian news about any of the stuff that's happened, but the song and dance that they're saying is so different than the song and dance that we're saying that it's almost hard to not feel like some of this may very well just be propaganda on our side too. Like, for whatever reason, I don't know why. I don't know what the motivation for us to enter that type of psyop with them.
I don't think it's a psyop for them, and this goes back to some of my other videos. I think it's a psyop for the American people, man. Like, there's no way, again, that that our politicians or our media and they control the media. We all know that. There's no way they can allow for shit to come out that's saying that Ukraine is losing, that Ukraine is getting ruled the fuck over. Like, there's no
after all the money leaves.
Yeah, after the billions of dollars we sent to them during a recession with gas prices through the roof, with eggs costing $1 billion, like, there's no way they can come back to the American people and be like, oh, they're losing the war. Yeah, we sent them fucking $310 million in tanks just recently, and I don't know, we sent them like 56, or now it's up to $108 billion with, like, I don't know, half of it missing. No big deal, but they're losing the war as well. So yeah, don't worry about it. Like, there's no fucking way that's the thing. That's why they're like, oh yeah, like, they're doing great. We're just gonna keep sending them shit because they need it, but they're doing good. So, like, they're gonna hold out. Go Ukraine, Ukraine for everyone. Blah. Like, fuck you, dude. There's no way that, like you said, like, a major superpower like Russia, there's no way they're not absolutely fucking rolling over them. Like,
yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense unless they're not actually trying to win. Like, it's possible that they're just trying to cause enough damage that America just enters into a fight with Russia. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, well, welcome to the party.
That's what I'm worried about. Yeah, like, I legit. Like,
they might not even care about the Ukraine that much. It might just be like, well, we're finally ready to fight you, so we're just gonna keep, I mean, think about it. Like, they're indiscriminately just blowing crap up. Useless crap, too. Like, does that sound like the actions of a tactically strong superpower?
Yeah, no, like, they're like launching missiles into, like, apartment complexes.
Yeah, just randomly, haphazardly. Yeah. Like somehow they don't have any guidance systems. They don't have any ability to aim. They're just, like, randomly, accidentally hitting hospitals.
I mean, so I was having this conversation with somebody else, and I thought of, like, okay, how do I play the devil's advocate here, right? Like, what if, and this is solely based off of what we've been seeing as far as the content coming out of that war. But, like, when you see these videos being made by these Russian soldiers, and you look at the fucking gear they're wearing, like, maybe they don't have guidance, dude. Maybe they don't have, like, GPS guided shit. Like, they're still rocking.
Their stuff is stuck in the 80s.
Yeah, dude. That's what I'm saying, though. But, like, if they can't even update the fucking the uniforms they're wearing, or the fucking AKs they're using, or the fucking, like, the no optics on any fire, like, you know what I mean? Like, if they can't even get out of the 80s in their
even arsenal, Ukraine has optics, bro.
Well, let's be fair. Most of the people fighting Ukraine aren't even Ukrainian. It was like when we were fighting Iraq. Like, most of those guys were, like, from the Czech Republic and shit. It was crazy. But I mean, I don't say most. I'm exaggerating. But it's just the fact that, like, you look at the content and you're like, how do I feel like I'm watching a fucking movie from some 80s, 80s built war?
Red Dawn.
Yeah, like Red Dawn. I'm watching fucking Red Dawn right now. And we're in 2023. Like, how do they have random missiles just, like, being launched into fucking civilian buildings for no reason? Like, it's just a complete waste of everything.
Well, that's because I think that they're trying to egg us on to get involved in a war, and then right alongside that, China's going to invade Taiwan simultaneously because they're going to they're going to need to do it in tandem with Russia's bullshit. Because if they don't, then we might actually stand a chance at having to go stop them. But, we're not going to be able to, defend Taiwan and the Ukraine at the same time as defending the rest of our interest worldwide.
I think that a huge portion of this whole thing is Russia just realized, like, dude, America was, and granted, a lot of the guys that have served that actually saw combat are no longer in. There's also a lot that are, and I think that Russia was like, dude, we need something because we need some of our leadership to fucking know what's going on, at least slightly, what combat fucking looks like. And that's why China's also getting itchy, because China hasn't even, as far as I'm concerned, China hasn't been on a fucking war ever. Like, fuck you. Like, you got invaded once by a fucking, by a country that was like the size of my pinky, and you fucking got your asses kicked. That was the last time you saw a war. And that was like,
well, yeah. And then before that, they got their asses handed to them by the Mongols. So,
yeah.
Mongolian.
So congratulations. You're like 500 years ago, you maybe did some shit. You know, you haven't been tested ever, as far as I'm concerned. Like, no one alive today in China has been tested in combatives in any way. So everyone's looking to the U.S. as like this powerhouse now, because we have the experience, we have the technology, we have the manpower, we have the industrial complex to support it if need be. So all the other major superpowers have to get on the same level. Like, they just do. And so Ukraine is a way to establish at least some of that combat experience.
Just talking about a live fire training exercise.
Yes, that's all it is. It's a fucking live fire training exercise where maybe you die. Same thing with fucking Taiwan. China's gonna roll through Taiwan, and it's gonna be the same concepts. It's gonna be the same idea.
Except I think that we're not gonna help Taiwan.
No, we're not gonna help Taiwan. No.
Though we should, because we're going to lose all of our interests in Japan, and Korea. We've got like, what, 70,000 or 50,000 troops in Korea alone. And, you know, I don't know exactly how many we have in Japan, but it's certainly not the amount we want to lose.
Probably just pull out. Probably just like...
Yeah, just abandon ship. Yeah.
Peace, boys.
Pop smoke, yeah, chucks.
See you guys later.
Well,
you guys, good luck. We'll be across the pond a little bit if you guys need us. We might get a little crazy. Could probably launch another nuke your way, Japan. We'll make sure it goes a little further, but you know, like we'll make it about somebody else.
You also have to consider that I think the greatest ally in Asia to Taiwan is probably Australia. And Australia knows that they're going to be on the fucking chopping block at some point. After, you know, they're not particularly safe in Asia themselves, so it's in their interest to not let Taiwan fall, because that just moves the clock up to whenever they're going to get fucked with. So, I think that's
an interesting piece to that whole puzzle.
Yeah, I wish that. Are they nuclear?
I don't believe so. Don't quote me on that, but I don't believe that they're nuclear.
Australia is the only G20 country where nuclear power is banned by federal law.
Yeah.
Technological neutrality. Federal and state politicians of all persuasions have said variously in the end of context. Well, whatever.
Yeah.
Moral objectors. Great.
That's kind of how I felt about it. I was like, okay, cool. Well, good luck. Yeah, I learned that when I was in Australia. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, well, we've already been at this for a little while now, so we will go ahead and say our final pieces maybe, and call it good.
Yeah, so final piece is Godspeed, always pimpin', never simpin', and people should definitely be working up their skills in survival. And I don't mean just the warfighting ones. I mean, like, people need to know how to hunt, people need to know how to fish, people need to understand how to make basic medicines, because you might need it. And people might also want to consider their life options in where they live, because there are certain very logically safe places, and there are certain very logically unsafe places. And thinking as natural blocks to success and survival is definitely not something you want to be negotiating with in a hurry. like rapidly, like instantly, like when you wake up and the power's off and
Well, shit. Now I gotta learn how to make a fire. Fuck. Well,
well, yeah, it's also not a particularly good time of year. You know, like it's pretty cold outside, so.
yeah, a fire might be useful. Maybe.
Mhm. Yep.
Or some really warm clothes.
Yeah, it's that's really, you know, I used to think that people who over prepped, stored food, canned stuff, bought excessive amounts of guns and ammunition. I used to think that they were kind of the idiots that you see on doomsday preppers that are so goofy that you're like, dude, you're not going to survive the end of this. Like, buy as much canned food as you want, you're going to die, dude. But now I'm thinking that everyone's got a little bit of prepper in them right now. It seems like everyone's got a little bit of prepper in them, and it probably wouldn't hurt to have a little bit more.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you anymore on everything you just said. It's gonna take if this tagline right here comes true in any way, right? If nukes land in the U.S. or we're at some sort of major war where like the home where Americans are gonna see for the first time in a very long time a war on our home front in any kind. Like it's gonna be
I mean, maybe a strategic nuclear war, but I don't think anyone's going to invade us. I don't think that. I just don't think.
I mean, here's the thing. I don't count anything out these days. I think that nuclear strikes, I think that missile strikes are a definite possibility. I think that I don't trust Canada in any way.
Yeah, they've turned pretty
So
pinko.
yeah, so I don't think that I don't put anything totally out of place. It'll be hard. We are fucking we have a lot of advantages as far as those things go, but if we're being brought down by the inside, who fucking knows?
Yeah,
So
well,
and again, if
I
we're at
don't
civil
know how
war,
much of our subterfuge that's happening on the inside is the enemy or just our own stupidity. Like I think that
true.
sometimes it's very hard to tell the difference.
Yeah.
Like it feels like there's a lot of snakes in the grass right now, but it also feels like we're not trying super hard to keep our shit moving either. Most citizens would happily love to see this country burn and to tear
Well,
it down brick by brick.
I think they say that, but I don't think that they understand the words or the meanings behind their thoughts, because if it actually came down to this, it's really easy to say, and I'm going to sound very, 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 very dumb right now, but from a point of privilege, there it's really easy to be like, oh, this country sucks. Like, fuck this country. I hope it burns. Like, well, I don't see you moving anytime soon. I don't see you packing your bags. I don't see you fucking actually doing anything about these things that you're so appalled by. So that's going to be maybe one of our next videos. We can talk more about American society as it sits today. But I guess my final piece on this is, again, I think this is a total possibility. I think that Putin has the balls to do it. I think that again, maybe we see them touch down in Ukraine first as a show of force. Maybe you're right. It also wouldn't surprise me if that touchdown is here first, because he said he would do it, and we'll see. We'll just have to wait and see.
It would be a very, very big mistake for them to botch a nuclear attack on America. So I don't think that they would take the risk of doing it without having a plan to successfully do it.
Yeah,
And
no, for sure.
that's why I think that it would most likely, be submarines off the coast.
Well, yeah. You say botch, but at the same time, it's I'm not sure that they. What's funny is, like, even if we got struck, I still feel like there's a possibility that, like, with the way that the world is turning, that average Americans today would be like, we understand.
We brought it on ourselves.
We brought it on ourselves. We're white, so we're definitely to blame. So you can just go ahead and send a few more, and we'll clean up the mess later. I know there'll be some dead bodies. I know that our kids are gonna have like 9 legs. But we're white again, so
We deserve this.
We deserve this. Can you just slap my hand? So with that said, I think that we're going to wrap it up. We hope that you guys enjoyed this. I know that I enjoyed it. I always enjoy talking with Rob. It's always a good time. Yeah. We'll see you guys later. Have a good one. Have an awesome day. We'll see you guys next time.